Welcome back, everybody. Sniping is fun here, and I invite all of you to yet another top 10 list on my YouTube channel. Today's topic is going to be on the idea of video game remakes, but not a top 10 of past remakes of games that have had remakes in the past, but a top 10 list of video games I believe should receive a remake in the future, whether it be the far future, the short, close future, or anything of the sort. Video games that I believe would be best served, best done, if they received a remake of some sort in the future. We've seen a lot of good remakes in the past. You know, Metal Gear Solid, the Twin Snakes on the GameCube. We've seen the Resident Evil remake on the GameCube. We've seen Super Mario All-Stars, which was the original 3, as well as Lost Levels, remade for the Super Nintendo. There's been a lot of good remakes in the video game world since its inception. There have also been some bad ones too. However, this list is of video games I personally believe should get a remake at some point in the future. Whether it's this generation, next generation, NX, PS4, Neo, Xbox One Slim, the next Xbox, I don't care. Or even on PC for that matter. Any video game I feel should receive a remake of some sort on this list. I hope you guys enjoy it. And let's get started right now with number 10. Number 10 goes to the one and only, pretty much, Grand Theft Auto game I truly believe and truly feel would be best served to get a remake, and that's Grand Theft Auto Vice City. For one reason and one reason only. It's set in the 80s, and it's based off Scarface, and you can do so much with it. Like, imagine current day technology, like what they did with Grand Theft Auto 5, but taking it back to the 80s in Vice City with Tommy Vercetti. You could expand on the 80s music, which I love my 80s music. That's the major reason I picked this, and it's the major reason why Vice City is one of my favorite Grand Theft Auto games, is because it's set in the 80s and has that 80s vibe, especially with the music, and they could add a lot more music to it that they didn't add in the original. As long as it's time-based with whatever. I forgot exactly when in the 80s Vice City takes place, but it's equivalent to the music there. And then you can expand upon it with more customization options in terms of clothing, like they did in Grand Theft Auto 5, like you could base, or even San Andreas for that matter, and just expand upon the story a little bit, make it more detailed in depth, maybe add some more missions, make the map a lot bigger. I think if there's any Grand Theft Auto game that they need a remake, it should be Vice City, and it was such a close tie between this and San Andreas, because I think San Andreas would benefit a lot from an update, HD remake, updated as well. I do think that game would make a lot of sense and work really well too, but I picked Vice City as a personal choice for me because of the 80s theme, the music and the whole vibe of the world that it's set in. The story is a really good story too. They could expand upon it with a remake. You add more detail, add more missions to it, add more in-depth story to it that could expand upon what the PS2 and Xbox and all that did with Vice City like 14 some odd years ago. Expand upon it, make the map a lot bigger. Like, you can go further, you can go further out or something, or maybe just make Vice City bigger. It is a fictional city, even though it's technically based off a real-world location. It still is technically a fictional city, and you can go and expand upon it, make it bigger, add more stuff to the game. You could add online to it, for that matter, like how they have like Grand Theft Auto Online with Grand Theft Auto 5. You could insert customization more for Tommy Vercetti. Instead of just getting generic clothes options, you can give him more customizable clothing, and expand upon the 80s music library and everything else. I think it would benefit a lot, and it would bring it back, a classic Grand Theft Auto game for a newer audience by remaking it and bringing it into, the current generation. Now that's my number 10. Let's get on to my number 9. The original Zone of the Enders. Now, when I did my list for franchises I believe needed to come back, I had Zone of the Enders on there. We need to one day see a Zone of the Enders 3, because there's so much more story you can go with. But given that Hideo Kojima is not with the company anymore, that's pretty much almost dead in the water. Although I really truly hope Konami gets their stuff together, because for like the last 6 years, Konami's been they pretty much do nothing with their franchise anymore. Like Silent Hill and Castlevania especially get jack squat from them. And stuff like Zone of the Enders hasn't been seen since the PS2, except for the HD collection on the PS3 and 360. Now, you could remake the second one all you want. I think that would be cool too, but the original is a classic, and I think the original would benefit a lot more from a remake. Because, you know, the technology, obviously you can see a difference in technology. You can give more, you know, detail to the characters, maybe get, like, more anime-oriented, like they did the second one, would be kind of cool too. And just expand upon it a lot more, like, make the game grander, maybe add missions and stuff, online multiplayer, being able maybe more customization to Jehuti, you know, bringing it to a new audience, because Zone of the Enders is a franchise that I really think a lot more people really should play, and while I don't really trust Konami with almost anything nowadays, I really truly don't, and them doing this could very well result in a massive failure and a remake that would really, might more than likely potentially, especially without Hideo Kojima on their team anymore, suck. It's still an idea, as a fan of Zone of the Enders, to want to see the original from, I think it was like 2001 when it came out, you know, updated in the current day technology, more stuff expanding to it, online multiplayer probably, expand the story, and update the visuals, because you can definitely see a difference in visuals now. Even though the visuals are still pretty decent, you know, for their time, like 2001 or so, like 15 some odd years ago, it would be so nice to actually see them expand upon it and maybe do what they did in Zone of the Enders 2, where most of it was anime cutscenes, update it so, you know, you could, it's more in detail, more in depth, and maybe more customization probably for Jehuti and stuff like that. It'd be kind of cool to bring it back if Konami did it right, and chances are, whether it be them remaking this or trying to do a Zone of the Enders 3 without Kojima, is very unlikely, sad to say. But it is a video game I would love to see remade, because I love giant mechs. And that's what Jehuti is a giant mech. And just expanding upon it, making it more detailed and more in-depth, improving the visuals, adding more, you know, features to it, more customization, more features to do. And you can finally bring Zone of the Enders. If we're not going to see a sequel anytime soon, because this franchise has been pretty much dead in the water for years, bring a remake and reinvigorate the franchise for newer fans, so they can get, you know, adapted and know the franchise of Zone of the Enders. Then you can try to do a sequel or try to do something. But knowing Konami, that's probably not going to happen. But it is a very big wish I would love to see happen. And it's my number 9. Now let's get on to my number 8. The original Metal Gear Solid. Now I know that it did get a remake on the GameCube with the Twin Snakes. And that's all fine and dandy, and I love that version of the game. They improved a lot of stuff in that game. But now after Metal Gear Solid 5, and it's kind of crazy, I went from one Konami franchise to another Konami franchise, and knowing what Konami's like now, I would be scared of them doing anything nowadays that's not a pachinko machine. I would love to see, after Metal Gear Solid 5, like, we now have a full-fledged backstory on Liquid as a kid. Dive into the world of Shadow Moses on Metal Gear Solid 1 again, updated now with more, like, you know, the style of, like, Metal Gear Solid 5, like, fully, and Metal Gear Solid 3, Subsistence for that matter, and 4, you know, the full-fledged, like, you can control the 3D camera, like, Metal Gear Solid 1, like, obviously didn't have the first-person mode, it was stuck in fixed camera, and they still had the fixed camera in Twin Snakes, and while that's a staple in classic Metal Gear Solid games, it'd be kind of cool to see them take that away, you know, even though it had first-person in Twin Snakes, and do a full-fledged 3D game, like, HD, more detail, you know, bring back David Hayter as Snake, for that matter, and dive into maybe making the remake of the game where we can find more story stuff revealed after Metal Gear Solid 5. So now that we know the whole backstory of Big Boss, backstory of all this stuff, of Liquid and everything, and pretty much leading up to Metal Gear Solid 1, they can actually now that we know all that stuff, because it was technically there in the original, but we didn't really know about it because none of that stuff was really either said or technically in detail or, you know, made for the series yet back in the day, because the newer games after just described a lot more stuff. Now that we know all that stuff, bring that into Metal Gear Solid 1, you know, basically reference it a lot more. Now we know that Liquid can reference all the stuff in Metal Gear Solid 5 and basically go into more detail between them connected to their, you know, dad, Big Boss, and like just update the visuals and put more detail into it, like what you would see like in a Metal Gear Solid 5 or 4 for that matter, or whatever. Like the newer Metal Gear Solids, do it to Metal Gear Solid 1. I love Twin Snakes, and it's always going to be a classic, always going to be one of my favorite GameCube games, but I would love to see Metal Gear Solid 1 upgraded, advanced, revisited, remade after that, and see what it would feel like to play Metal Gear Solid 1 with the way the Metal Gear Solid series is nowadays. Which, just like I said with Zone of the Enders, without Hideo Kojima on the team, I'd be scared as hell about what Konami would be doing to something like this, especially after Metal Gear Solid Survive, or Metal Gear Survive. I'm scared of what they could do, like I said. That's not a pachinko machine, because they don't seem to do anything with their franchise anymore. But if this is done right, a Metal Gear Solid 1 remake of what we see now, like in Metal Gear Solids 3, 4, and 5, fully functional 3D camera, upgraded visuals, and gameplay options, it could really make this game even better if done right. And knowing, Konami, that's a big, big gamble. Now that's my number 8. Let's get on to number 7 on this list. Tales of Phantasia, the original Tales game. I have not played it yet. I want to play it. Obviously, I cannot play the original because it's a Super Famicom game and it was never localized here on Super Nintendo. And I still have not found the remake on the Game Boy Advance. But here's the thing with the remake on the Game Boy Advance. It was, basically in the old style of the Tales games. And I'm not going to bash the old Tales style because that's really classic, the whole 2D style that they had in the old games, because that's a classic for the franchise. And I still want to play the Game Boy Advance version of this. But I would love to actually see the original Tales game. The one that started it all, redone in the style of, say, like a Tales of Symphonia, or a Tales of Berseria, or a Tales of Zestiria, Tales of Graces, Tales of Xillia. A 3D remade, updated game of the original Tales, Tales of Phantasia, because it would be so cool to see them actually update this game and bring it back as a classic, maybe for like an anniversary. I don't know when the next anniversary for the Tales series is, but this would be so cool to see them actually give limelight to like Cress Elbane and his entire party, where the Tales franchise started back in the 90s, and give it a new limelight for newer fans of the Tales games that may not have experienced that, or may not have the ability to find, to get like a Japanese copy of the Super Famicom one, or find the Game Boy Advance one for that matter, to have something that allows them to find it. Because I don't think either of those versions are on any download store anywhere either, which is kind of sad. But updated visuals, like, you would see the Tales of Berseria, or Xillia, or Graces, or Symphonia or so, 3D style. Update it, add more items and details and stuff, and maybe references to other games like costumes and whatever you want to do, and secret unlockable stuff. Flesh out the story more, and give this one a fresh, new, revisiting. There was an anime based off of this. Just take the voice actors from that, give it more detail. Obviously, Cress Elbane is voiced, if they keep the voice from the anime, he's voiced by Johnny Young Bosch. And just update it. It'd be so cool to see this one revisited, since it's the original one that started it all. And just imagine all the new gameplay factors, all the gameplay features, all the gameplay that they've added to the Tales series over the years, brought into the original and updated, so it's more modern. And I'm not going to go and hate the old ones, because it's where it started. It's classics and they're great games in their own right. But it would be so awesome to see this one remade. That's my number 7. Let's get on to my number 6. Final Fantasy IX. Now, why do I specifically pick Final Fantasy IX? Is because it's my first Final Fantasy. I didn't really get back into Final Fantasy back on the NES or Super Nintendo or so, and it was years later when I got into Final Fantasy like 7 and 8 and whatnot. Final Fantasy IX was like the first Final Fantasy game for me, so for nostalgia value, it is one I would pick specifically because of that, but it's also a beloved Final Fantasy of its own right. It was returned after Final Fantasies like 7 and 8 to the more fantasy-oriented style, which was like in the earlier Final Fantasies. It has some cool characters like Zidane. You get Steiner and VV and all this stuff. It's a cool party, cool story, cool characters, cool music. And if they're remaking Final Fantasy VII because it's such a beloved classic and so many people love it, and it got a lot of people into RPGs and stuff like that, another Final Fantasy they should revisit is Final Fantasy IX, because it's just as beloved. There's a lot of fans out there that love Final Fantasy IX, and I do think it would benefit a lot from an updated, new take on the game with modern day technology. And it would get more people to experience some of these other older Final Fantasy games, if they did what other ones do. I'm specifically picking 9 more so from nostalgia for me, and because I see it referenced a lot that this is one they should remake. Because then just Final Fantasy VII, it's not all about Final Fantasy VII, and I would hope that when Square Enix is done remaking Final Fantasy VII, they go back and they revisit some of their older ones, because some of those ones, and you know which ones I'm talking about, are just as beloved and just as, you know, fan hyped for a remake and want to see Square Enix revisit it as Final Fantasy VII. And Final Fantasy IX is it for me, and that's why it's my number 6. It would be so cool to see it revisited and updated and to see where Square Enix could take it. Now we are into my top 5. And now let's get on to number 5 and see what my next game I want to see remade is. WWF No Mercy on the N64. Now here's where it kind of goes, instead from a remake to a pseudo-sequel, because there is no way, licensing-wise, WWF No Mercy could be fully remade, because of obvious reasons. Certain wrestlers on the roster, say Chris Benoit, and other wrestlers that licensing-wise that they can't probably get. So I would love to just hopefully see them update it with more like, I mean, I don't want this is something that should be like an indie game, something that should be not a full-fledged $60 game. I want it to be something that you could download on, like, the Wii Shop, the eShop for Nintendo, or the PlayStation Network store, or something, the Xbox store, or something like that. Like a download game for like $10 to $15 or so. I want it to still be that same, not like, blocky-ish style, but the textures and the details on it being a lot more defined and a lot better. That's the only thing. I still want it to look almost the same. Don't try to make it look like WWE 2K or the main WWE games over the last like 10 years or so. Keep the similar style. Keep it to being like the blocky-ish design of it, but just with higher detail, higher quality textures and stuff, so that the wrestlers look a little bit more defined. And obviously, like I said, licensing, it would be awesome for them just to license this game out and update it like that and bring it to the shop to download on like your NX or your PlayStation 4 or something like that. But chances are the more realistic option is to make it a pseudo-sequel where they update the Road to WrestleMania story, they keep whatever legends, which nowadays they'd be legends, from the Attitude Era, from the original Mercy, in the game, and update it so you have like the NXT roster, the Raw roster, SmackDown roster, and stuff like that, all the women. You get the 4 horsewomen, you get yourself Sami Zayn, Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, John Cena, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns. You get people from this game like Kane, Undertaker, you get The Rock, Triple H, and you can get an updated Triple H with short hair, and then the long-haired one. Edge, Christian, all the Attitude Era guys from this as legends, as well as you can throw in legends like probably like Macho Man Randy Savage and stuff like that. And then having the current day roster of like NXT people, SmackDown Raw, like the new and old people, try to balance it out so it's like a pseudo-sequel to this game. I would love to see this happen because I miss the Aki engine. I miss the AKI engine of wrestling games. They were so fun to play and so simplistic yet hard, simplistic to play but hard to master and really get to understanding it. So anyone can really pick up and play them. And just imagine them expanding upon this, updating the visuals a little bit, not too much. A roster of like, if they add the new guys and keep as many of the old guys, whatever, you have a roster of like 200 plus wrestlers, men and women, legends and new people, NXT and all that. You can probably add online play. You have the character customization, so you probably can create, like, if they expand about like 50 to 100 to 200 wrestlers. Like I said, online play, and it's just a fully fledged updated game in the Aki engine, and it's like the 3rd game in the series, at least WWE wise, from WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy to this, not including the WCW NWO World Tour and Revenge stuff. That would be number 5, technically, then, although technically you have Virtual Pro Wrestling 1 too, so it's like number 7. Okay. But yeah, return the Aki engine, a pseudo sequel to this, if you can't do a full-fledged remake, which they won't be able to licensing-wise, and just add so much more to it. It'd be so fun. That's my number 5. Let's get on to my number 4. Pokemon Snap. Because if there's one Pokemon game that keeps eluding us to see a sequel, remake, anything to, it's Pokemon Snap, and I don't know why Nintendo does not do anything with this. They had the most perfect opportunity to do something with this on the Wii U, and they squandered it so effing bad. Pokemon, just imagine, like here's another thing where it's like I said with No Mercy, you can do a remake and it'd be awesome with HD, semi-visuals, taking pictures of all the Generation 1 Pokemon they had in this. But now, since we're like 6 generations later in Pokemon, it would be better for it to be a sequel, but I'd say more of a pseudo-sequel than a full-fledged sequel. But even if they just remake it where it's like the Generation 1 Pokemon like this and it's updated, that's fine. Although I think if they don't add content to it, the game is kind of short anyways, so it needs to be a pseudo-sequel remake rather than just a full-fledged remake. So you can add the Pokemon from Johto, from Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, Kalos, and now Alola, and you can have, like, instead of just like the 8 courses you can go on, you can have those, and then once you beat the game and you, like, start it off as, this is the thing, start it off as a remake, where you go through all the courses of the original Pokemon Snap. And then once you get to the Mew stage and take a picture of them, like Professor Oak could be like, oh, look, there's more places out there you can take Pokemon of, let's go. And then you travel off that island, and you go to different islands or different regions or different stuff to go and capture Pokemon from generations 2 through 7 and take pictures of them. Start it off as a full-fledged remake, and then turn the second half of the game into a pseudo-sequel with more Pokemon from generations 2 and beyond. So it's like a remake, but then it's a pseudo-sequel at the same time. There you go. That is the perfect idea, Nintendo. Do something like that. Pokemon Snap is a spin-off of Pokemon I would really like to see them revisit, and it's sad we have not seen anything at all. And please, Nintendo, anything with Pokemon Snap is very much appreciated. Now that's my number 4. Let's get on to my top 3. My number 3 being Spyro the Dragon. Now, it's not specifically one Spyro the Dragon. It's the original trilogy of Spyro the Dragon games on the PlayStation 1. Original Spyro the Dragon. Ripto's Rage. Year of the Dragon. Because if Crash Bandicoot can get a remake, Spyro the Dragon should be able to get a remake as well. And we haven't seen Spyro a whole lot lately except for him being stuck in Skylanders. Crash Bandicoot the same way, but now that it's being revitalized and the original 3 Crash Bandicoots are being remade, it brings Crash Bandicoot back into the spotlight, and we could eventually probably see, depending on how those are received, newer Crash Bandicoot games. Do the same thing with Spyro the Dragon. Update a series of these games for all 3 systems, not just PlayStation. Like everything. You can put on Xbox and Nintendo as well. It would be on PlayStation obviously first, but licensing-wise, it probably would go to everything, more than likely. Get us to know Spyro the Dragon again. Not just Skylanders Spyro, but Spyro the Dragon, the classic trilogy. Update it, HD, remake it, and then we can finally see, in the spotlight again, Spyro the Dragon, so we can finally see the series continued where it should be. Not Skylanders, but Spyro the Dragon himself. That's my number 3. Here's my number 2 on this list. Zombies Ate My Neighbors from the Super Nintendo, and I believe it was also on the Sega Genesis. Here's the thing. This game especially is on my list for one reason only. It is a nostalgic overload. Nostalgia overload for me, because I grew up with this game on the Super Nintendo. It's one of my favorite games on the Super Nintendo. 1 to 2 players walking around, saving your neighbors from giant ants and chainsaw guys and killer dolls like Chucky and, zombies, obviously. Evil killer giant baby. Like werewolves and Frankenstein monsters and stuff like that. It's a crazy, horror-based game that's not super scary, but more, comedic and funny, and it's also a good co-op game to play with someone else. With all these horror-based games we see lately that go for stuff more serious, go for being scary, go for other, anything besides just being wacky, crazy fun, Zombies Ate My Neighbors would be so different and stand out from nowadays. Like, they took this game and made an updated indie-style game on, the eShop for the NX, or the PlayStation Network store, or something like that. Like, top-down, updated HD visuals like you see in a remake like Ducktales or something. Like the Ducktales game on PS3, 360, Wii U, and whatnot. Update it, add more levels, because there's a million levels already, just double or triple it, makes the game even more zany, fun, add more monsters. It'd be a nice horror-based game that's not scary and you can play with anyone of all ages. It's just fun co-op play, just shooting monsters and saving neighbors. Because that is something we really need, because it will stand out. A more comedic, lighthearted approach on the horror monsters and horror subjects, instead of just all the serious stuff like Left 4 Dead and everything, all that nowadays. Not saying that stuff isn't needed, like Resident Evil, Left 4 Dead, whatever, but we need something that's lighthearted too. And it'd be a nice thing to play with family members around the Halloween season, which we are slowly coming up on. So maybe if you do remake this, release it at the beginning of October, and it'd be a big special for that month, for Halloween. That's my number 2. Now, before we get into my number 1, I'm going to go through a few honorable mentions of other video games I would like to see remakes to as well. They weren't on this list because I didn't want to see remakes of them as much, but a lot of them on my list are ones that came this darn close, because every honorable mention I have on here are also other video games I would love to see remakes of, or love to see where they could go with it, or they are personal ones. Either or. Here are some honorable mentions of video games that came this close to being on the list. They're all games I want to see remade, but they were this close to making it to the list. But they are all still games, like I said, that I would love to see remade as well. Bousheyblade, for being a standout, and I never played them either. I really want to go back and play the Bousheyblade games. But for the fact that they stand out from other fighting games, like you fight people on teams, or you're Smash Brothers crazy style, and you have life bars or whatever. This stands out because the matches could be over so freaking quickly. You have all these different fighters from different fighting styles, between swords and guns and whatever the heck they wield, spears and lances and stuff. And matches are more realistic, and it'd be awesome just to go into a fight and you slice someone's arm off and you beat them in like 10 seconds, because that's how the fight could realistically go. And it's supposed to be more like realistic combat, and it will stand out from other fighting games, and it'd be something cool for them to bring back, because it would stand out from your Street Fighters and your Smash Brothers and your Tekkens and your Soul Calibers and whatnot. And it's more of a realistic approach to a fighting game, and it'd be kind of cool to see where they could expand on it now, adding more characters, adding more fighting styles. Maybe fighting styles that don't involve weapons, like some karate guys or something, or some alien type things that shoot. Like, I don't know. You could do a lot of stuff, like between the samurai warriors and the karate guys and the ninjas and the one lady that has a machine gun that shoots people and all that stuff, and make the characters as cheap or whatever it is you want. Just add a lot of different fighting styles. It'd be so fun. Fighting Force, because it's a cool... It was technically supposed to be like Streets of Rage 4, as far as I remember. And it's a cool beat-em-up game, like a 3D rendition of something like a Fighting Force, of Streets of Rage or Final Fight or something like that. And it is a really fun game, especially playing co-op. And it's so cool, and I'd love to see them return to this. Not Fighting Force 2, because that game kind of sucked. Fighting Force 1, though, is a classic. Threads of Fate, a classic square soft RPG on the PlayStation 1 that still has a decent cult following, I think. I still have it. And it's a fun, non-Final Fantasy, non-Kingdom Hearts, non-Chrono Trigger RPG from them that kind of got one game and got forgotten about. It would be kind of cool to see them remake it and expand upon the universe, because it's such a different RPG nowadays, and we can finally get something else from them that's not the standard Final Fantasy and whatnot. And it is a classic RPG, and it's a unique style, unique characters, unique world. Tao Concerto, a classic Atlas PlayStation 1 platforming game that I think was based off an anime, or they made an anime later on, or maybe the anime stuff was all related to the game. I have no clue. It is a classic in my opinion, PlayStation 1 Atlas platforming game, and it'd be so cool to revisit these characters because they were pretty cool. Final Fantasy IV. Now, Final Fantasy IX was on my list mostly for nostalgia, and mostly because I personally want to see it, and as well as a lot of people. But there is another Final Fantasy game that really deserves to be a remake as well, and that's Final Fantasy IV. Give Cecil, I mean, it was remade, yes, I know. It was remade on the DS, and that's all cool. But bring it to something like NX. Fully, fledged voice acting, HD visuals, super in-depth. If Final Fantasy VII is going to remake, because it's such a classic, Final Fantasy IV is a classic as well. Remake it for like the NX or something, update it, expand upon it, do what you did in the DS version, expand upon it, there you go. Or there's another Final Fantasy on the list of Final Fantasies that should be remade, as well as Final Fantasy VI. For one reason, and one reason only. Seeing an HD Kefka and his laugh and his character and everything. If there's one major reason we want to see a Final Fantasy VI remake, besides seeing a revisit to Terra's game, because we have not seen a remake of Final Fantasy VI at all. At least Final Fantasy 3 and 4 got remakes on the DS and whatnot. Final Fantasy VI hasn't seen like anything besides like that slightly updated one on the Game Boy Advance years ago. We need to see it because we get to see an HD Final Fantasy Dissidia of Final Fantasy Kefka in the game. Bring it to NX because it'd be awesome there, and HD visual, updated gameplay, give it a full-fledged remake, because if there's one, the Super Nintendo ones I believe deserves to be mostly remade, it's this one more so than 4, but 4 deserves it too. Legend of the Dragoon, because it's a classic PlayStation 1 RPG and Sony franchise that needs to be brought back because it's been left in the dust since the PlayStation 1 days, and you can expand upon it, make the game more in-depth and story-wise. You can finally get Dart into a potential PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale sequel, if that ever does happen. See my list on that, because he was included on that list. And we could potentially see sequels. They could bring it back, reinvigorate the franchise for newer fans, and then make sequels. It's a Sony franchise that's been missing for years. But remake the original because that's a good place to start. Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, a classic, original Nintendo, platforming game. If they remade Ducktales, they could remake Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, as well as Darkwing Duck. Come on, we got Ducktales remade, which is a classic NES platforming game. Do the same thing. Do the same thing for Darkwing Duck and Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. The updated visuals, 2D visuals they did to it, and make it look more like the cartoon. And there you go. Update it, make it awesome, and bring them back because they are classics on the NES and they'd be classics nowadays. And Maniac Mansion, because it is a classic click story-based game that'd be so cool to see updated with 2D HD visuals, like you see a lot of indie games now on stores like eShop and PlayStation Store and whatnot. Just updating it, all those different stereotypes, all the different crazy stuff you could do in the house, clicking stuff and doing the story and stuff. It is a classic, whether the NES version or PC and whatnot. Maniac Mansion. A lot of people, it's a cult classic almost. It'd be so awesome just to take that rat and put it back in the microwave and one more time. And that's it for my honorable mentions of video games I believe need to get remakes or should have remakes. And let's have a drum roll, please, for my number 1 game I think should get a remake. Ready, and start, and go! And my number 1 is Sunset Riders. Now, if Zombies Ate My Neighbors was a super fan favorite on the Super Nintendo, one of my favorite games on the Super Nintendo, Sunset Riders, sure as hell, was another one. I always remember playing this with my cousin growing up, friends too for that matter. It is a classic, another Konami-based game. sad to say. There's 3 Konami games on this list, and they probably won't do any of it. But it's a classic. It is Contra in the Old West. You play as cowboys, like Cormano and Bob and Billy and whatever, and you shoot up different bandits and fight the evil, gang people or whatever, and go after, what's his name, Rose or something, the main dude or whatever, and beat all his little henchmen along the way. It's such a classic. It is so hard, too. I've never been able to beat the final boss in this game. Even on the easiest difficulty, he's freaking hard as hell. But it's such a classic, and a lot of people love this. Do what was done to something like Ducktales. Take the visuals and make it more like super animated, cartoon, HD, 2D visuals. And just give it a full remake treatment. And even with a remake, you could add some more levels. You could add some more bosses to fight. You can add 4-player multiplayer like it was in the arcade. It was only 2 players in the console versions. But bring this back so we can see super HD, great, awesome, Contra-like gameplay in the Old West of Sunset Riders with 4 players. Online play 2. Awesome music. Awesome game. And that is my number 1 video game I would love to see remade. Now put in the comments section what you guys think. Do you guys like this list? Do you agree with any of this list? What would be your games you would love to see remade? And we can discuss it down there, have some fun. My name is Sniping Fun. Peace. Please subscribe if you want to. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you all later in my next video. Bye.